Welcome to the Simply Authentic podcast with Angie and Tanya, where we hope to inspire you to dream big and push past your fear, empower you to take charge of your own life, and challenge you to be the most authentic self you can be.
Back to the Simply Authentic podcast. I'm Tanya Murfin.
And I'm Angie Mullings. And we are joined in studio today, fortunate to have a great guest. She is Kristen Hazeltine.
Hazeltine. Let's all say it together.
I have to laugh because I know you as writer. So, Kristen Reiner. And then I'm like, no, that's not right. So, okay. Yeah.
I tell everybody, Hazel Dazzle, Hazeltine.
Hazeltine. All right. So, Kristen, I know her from a previous life, but she is currently the president and CEO of Show Me Christian County.
Yes.
So, thanks for joining us.
Welcome,
Thank
Kristen.
you, guys. I
nice
appreciate being here. Nice to meet you. Yes, thank you.
So, just kick us off here. Let's talk about what, first of all, how you got to where you are as the president and CEO of this organization, and then tell us a little bit about what the organization does.
Okay. So, I have been in the region since I was in middle school. So, I have grown up playing sports, went to college here. I love this area. So, whenever I decided to pick a major, I wanted to do something that would be impactful. And so I ended up going down the nonprofit path, serving the community. And so that led me to a couple of different positions over the years. And then I was ready to take that next step into a leadership role. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time, like where that would take me. And I had several phone calls that said, hey, have you thought about this? And I'm like, well, economic development is not, in my world, a nonprofit. That's not what I was thinking. And so, and then I started doing some research on what economic development actually meant. And to me, I started getting a lot more excited because I was like, oh my gosh, this could have so much bigger, greater impact than some of the organizations I've been part of. And I don't want to discount anything that has been done previously or any of the other jobs. It was just such a bigger scale. And so I really thought this could really be fulfilling to me and who I am, but also be able to serve the greater communities in the region. And so I was so excited whenever they actually selected me because I had no background in economic development. And so it was a very big learning curve, and I'm 2 years in now, and I have been attending conferences and education seminars just to get a understanding on what it is that really needs to be done and to move our communities forward. And I've loved it. So it's been a great experience over the last 2 years.
Great. So, Show Me Christian County, how old of an organization is it?
Yeah, we are 6 years old.
Okay.
So we are a private-public partnership. So about 50% partnership is our government entities in Christian County. So city of Nixa, Ozark, and then the county are our largest funders, and then we have the other 50% is our private businesses. So our organization really brings together the two sides to figure out growth strategies and hiccups and how do we move things forward and build those relationships between each other. And I sign a lot of NDAs, and so even working with the businesses on figuring out what they're wanting to do and to grow when they're not ready to announce publicly, and so they are not able to talk to the cities directly, and so we're kind of that work between where the businesses have that confidentiality. And there's various reasons, whether it's competition in the market or it's they don't want employees to be concerned, things like that. So, so we are that private-public partnership, and we have around 60 investors where we're partners that come to the table to work on Christian County.
Okay.
Wow.
Awesome.
So are you able to tell us of some of the things that has happened in Christian County since this nonprofit organization came to be, and maybe even some things that are being worked on. Of course, the things that you can disclose.
Yes, that's why I giggled. So I would say some of our biggest accomplishments, creative audio, if you go down Highway 65, that development would not have landed there if it wasn't for the work of our organization. And I also try to be very careful because it's not just one organization. It is a team of people from the cities to the our private sectors, our utility partners, everybody that comes together for these projects. So Creative Audio was our first and our one of our biggest projects that we've been part of. There is a concrete company out in Highlandville. They've been open for about a year and a half. They're also they're now the largest tax producer for the city of Highlandville. Same thing, they would not have been in Christian County because they were looking at a wide variety of different communities. They were not from the area, so it was an attraction project. So there was really 10 jobs, I think, initially, $2 million investment, and then we've had they're continuing to grow, which is exciting to hear. We 14 Mill Market is our most recent opening that. They're getting ready to celebrate, I think, their 1 year in June. And so those, and each project has been different on what our role was. With Rich and 14 Mill, that is really the business plan, and then also the financial analysis whenever they were doing their trying to get their funding from their bank partners. And so there was those are a couple of ones that we've worked on previously. But now I actually just did my board report. And I'd say a year ago, just the number of projects that we were around 8 to 10. And right now I have I think we have 19 projects that are not announced. 15 unannounced, 14 that are announced, and then we have 10 leads in addition to that. So, we're seeing people interested. We're trying to find places for them. It is, it's a lot that we're managing, and it's exciting. One of them that was announced was the Brad Tessing property, the development up near Walmart in Ozark, across the way. That's going to be a 20-acre development, and that was one of a kind of a grassroots effort. It was started off with just conversations with the property owner of what are your interests. It's a legacy landowner. They've been there for a very long time, and it wasn't. I mean, they've been approached by others before, but it was also kind of that conversation of, what do you want to see with this property? And I think that's something that comes at that nonprofit side is finding out, like, are you, what do you want to do with it? It's not that you were forcing anything to happen, but it's like, is it a legacy piece where you want your name on it? Is this, or is it for your grandchildren? Is this, are you thinking of money down the road to send kids to college? We just wanted to know, and that's where it started. And so through that conversation, it took a while. And then he decided they wanted to go ahead and sell part of the property to do the development. So that's, hopefully within the next year or so, we'll see the ground moving a little bit and get that project going.
Excellent.
So,
Why do you think people, you have several projects in the works, or people, leads, what is appealing to them about Christian County? Why are they looking at Christian County?
I think one is our schools. We have amazing schools in Christian County, and so if they're trying to attract people to come and work for them, they're looking at the school districts. They're seeing what what they have to offer. And our crime rates are low in Christian County too. We have land. And on the flip side, that's our biggest challenge we have is the infrastructure. So we're trying to balance those two of growing at the right pace and make sure that we have all the infrastructure in places so we can grow. And that's where, availability of already ready sites and buildings, that's where we struggle because we're not quite ready. We're trying to get there. And so that's part of what we've been working on with the cities is being ready and planning on, whether it's, the hookup fees, impact fees that we need to be charging now. Do we need to be asked at the state level for funding for roads to be improved to be able to get to a development? We're just that's where we're at right now. So.
How do people get plugged into you?
That is a great question. Because we're not an outward facing organization.
Right. There's not a storefront that you can go in and see, show me Christian County.
No. We really are referral based. So our website, we have a marketing person and she's done an amazing job at trying to get our information up there and updated. And we have our state level partners that are in touch with us where we know if there's things trickling down from like international or national leads that we can respond to. But it's really our partners, and that's our chambers. That is our cities have to make that call and say, hey, have you heard of this? You might want to call them. It's, our investors are calling us and saying, hey, we've heard this group might be looking and they might want to find a place in Christian County. Can you give them a call? And then that's how it's all really referrals.
And I'm assuming, so I'm trying to picture all this, network in my mind. I'm assuming you have a form for that where somebody puts you in touch with creative audio owners or whoever's working on that project, and you go down a checklist of sorts of asking them questions and then letting them ask questions of you and what you know about your county and the resources you already have. I'm sure that a lot of those look different. Like Creative Audio's probably looks way different than your example about the Tessing project and that family land there and what that's going to look like. Is there any rhyme or reason to that? Like Angie and I work with buyers and sellers. Somebody's buying, somebody's selling. There's, that we're going to ask them all the same questions. They're just going to feed that. How do you start with those questionnaires?
And I feel like usually our first meeting is we're building the relationship. And it's the trust. Because if you're working on one of our projects, some of them we've been working on for 2.5 years. And so we don't have to get all of the information at once. But it's the high level things that we need to know. Acreage, willing to buy, sell, lease, the basic information. And then we're also thinking with the hat of the state incentives of jobs. Are they higher than average income for the county? Are you meeting incentives? Are there would it be better fit for one of our more rural communities or one of the more, Nixa or Ozark, the more metro areas. So, and that sometimes that plays into the USDA loans that they can qualify for. And so we're also, it just depends on their needs. And so, and how much they want our involvement versus how much they're just, this is the only thing I need from you. I've got all the other stuff. But it's been interesting lately with the political dynamic with our local communities going to council meetings and actually advocating for projects too has been something we've really been doing a lot of over this last year because we're educating and working with our councils so they understand all the different dynamics and but they. So I know I've kind of taken this conversation a little different, but there's so many different pieces to the puzzle that we're trying
Helps
to
me
solve.
understand. That it's not one form fits all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, so a couple of things there. First of all, I want our listeners to understand that once a project is announced, it's been years in the making typically. These things don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
You've got to find the land. You've got to advocate for, with the city or the county or whatever on some things. So it's a really long process most of the time.
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to this. If there's one rivalry that has been long standing, it's that rivalry between Ozark and Nixa. And having been involved in a regional organization before, I know that people can get territorial. What's the experience been like when coming together with Show Me Christian County? Because you're taking not just Nixa and Ozark, obviously, but they're the bigger players. And has there been an evolution, if you will, in thought there?
Thank you for asking that, because last week we had a meeting where Max Buteau came in from Cox. We had a partner from Forvis come in. We had Jonas Argis from Taney County Partnership, and then David Cameron from Republic came in. And it was actually a discussion about regionalism, and Max highlighted how great it was. And how Show Me has been playing such a great part in really bringing together just Christian County alone first. And we kind of had to build that and build that relationship. And I'm not going to say Friday night football lights, it's going to always be there.
It's on.
It's good. But I think that there's been a shift where people in both together, the two city administrators came in and decided they needed this organization. So
awesome.
They're the ones that championed it. They're the ones who went out and said, we need to do this together, and we need to think about Christian County, and we need to figure out, are we losing? Why are we losing? Why do we not have a seat at the table? Where's our voice? And they felt that together they would have more impact than if they just tried to do this separately. And that also has to do with funding. Funding economic development efforts, it's not a cheap
endeavor.
Yeah, and so you have to think about that too. And they realized they needed each other. And there's lots of stories from the beginning of Show Me. Whenever there was we were looking at different locations, and we showed Nixa. And Nixa city administrator and chamber people were in the cars, and they couldn't find the right spot, and the people were not happy. And before just sending people back to a different part of Missouri, they took them over to Ozark and said, well, we don't fit here for you, but let's take you over here and let's see what else is out here.
Yeah.
And they won that project because they did
awesome.
that. And they let the guard down. And going back to the regionalism as a whole, celebrate the wins.
Yeah,
a win in Ozark is a win for Nixa.
That's right.
A win in Republic is a win for all of us.
That's
and,
right.
And I think that's where it's great to see that we've, I feel like Show Me has been played such an integral part in bringing together the communities and the vision. So it's fun to be part of that too. So,
yeah. Oh yeah, because you're absolutely right. Even if Springfield gets something, the entire region wins, right? So let's shift a little bit and talk about regionalism, because last week we had on Aaron D'Anastasio with the Hatch Foundation. We introduced our listeners to LORE, which is the partnership essentially that's looking at regionalism, and I know that Show Me Christian County was part of that. So let's go back. You said it was your very first visit. We talked about the Springfield Chamber's community visits to different communities that they do every year, and 2 years ago it was to Northwest Arkansas. You were on that visit. You were new in your position. So talk to us about what insights you had coming back from that.
Yeah. So it was eye-opening, because I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Because I had no idea what to expect. I was pretty much told like, oh, this is a great networking thing. This is where you really get to know some of your colleagues that you need to work with, some of the business leaders. So I just kind of had this like optimistic, and I was like, oh, we're going to talk about regionalism, and I didn't really know what that all entailed. And so during the 3 days we were there, it just seemed like there was like this I said it's a feeling, like you had a feeling of like, this is bigger, and like people in these rooms, they want to talk, they want to come up with solutions. They're not ready to just go back and be like, okay, see you next year. You felt that people were almost felt compelled to figure out like, how do we replicate?
Yeah.
And I don't even want to say replicate. How do we bring the quality of place that Northwest Arkansas has created? How do we bring that here?
Yeah.
And I think people were, and I think that my understanding is that CLVs have done great things coming back, and that you can show some of the track record of things that have been done. But I think that this was amplified as far as we need, and it wasn't even the Springfield Chamber needs to lead this. This is going to be the business community that leads this discussion.
Right.
And that's where I think Aaron, reaching out to CFO and figuring out who should be there and part of this discussion. And I also very humbled that they invited me to be part of the discussion. Representing Christian County, because they started off with a larger group. And then they wanted a work group. And so Steve Childers was in the meeting and he sent me a message like, that's you, like you get to do that. And I was like, and of course I would do that. And so there ended up being a smaller group that had several more meetings with, I'm going to lose his name too. The gentleman that's from North Carolina that did the study.
Yes.
He came back and we had many meetings, just questions, kind of gauging, where everybody's at and what do we need to be focusing on. Since we're not Northwest Arkansas, what are our problems here, and what does this group need to start working on to get some wins too.
Sure.
And it's that private sector side that, I'm excited to see how they drive this initiative and to see, how it's all going to work together. So,
Right.
And even with all of the other organizations that are touching on regionalism, I think this is a very different group.
Very different. I think the obvious difference there is, there have been lots of regionalism attempts, and some somewhat successful, but they've all been from the public sector, right? And what I took away from that trip to Northwest Arkansas, as you said, it shouldn't all be on the chamber, and it's probably best if it's not, because it's so much red tape to get things done. And I talk about the white papers. We got to write a white paper about this and a white paper. Whereas the private sector, we run businesses. We have to move quicker and able to sustain ourselves. We have to make decisions much quicker, and we can't, we don't have as many people to answer to, I guess. And so I think that's what's going to be the big difference maker in between past attempts and what LOR is attempting to do, and getting those big stakeholders, private entities to help fund this and drive it.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited because I want to share as well, whenever we had the meeting last week about regionalism with our investors from Christian County, we did a mentee poll, and so people were in the audience, sharing their thoughts and questions. One of the questions we asked was, how do you feel about regionalism? Because I wanted two things. I wanted the people that were there, the business owners, to share with some of the leaders that are going to be pushing this initiative forward. I wanted them to hear the concerns that I'm hearing from our investors, but also for them to understand, like, there's willingness in people to buy into this and to be part of this. So it's I wanted them to have an understanding, and so I was really happy with the responses because the number one thing that popped up was hopeful. So I was like, well, that was encouraging.
Yeah.
And then the number 2 and 3, they were tied, was skeptical and optimistic.
Interesting.
So, yes. And I think that, again, we have that private-public partnership, and I think some of the skepticism is from attempted things in the past. Is this going to work?
Yeah, makes sense.
And then also, I think there's always a concern about the funding. You know, is this, going to be sustainable? And, is this, can we find that balance with, if somebody else's SIMCOG is a group, or SREP, the Springfield Regional Economic Partnership, are they all vying for funding, trying to do their regional efforts? And so I think that's some of the uncertainty, and I think that the identity of the communities is what one of the questions, and I think it was a great point, is people don't want to lose their identity in the regionalism effort. And especially our, Nixa and Ozark have done a great job with their schools, with low crime rates, with the things that they're doing. And I think that they're concerned about some of that small town charm. That they don't want to lose that and be lost and just lumped in. And so I think they want a voice, and that's where I get to hear from them, and I get to communicate that. So that we do have a seat at the table.
So it sounds like our communities have evolved a lot. Your organization is case in point that your efforts in particular have caused Christian County to be chosen as a place for a new business or a place for a new shopping center or whatever it is. So, but everybody still wants their own identity. What do you think, in your experience, has kept us from progressing in the past? So it sounds like at least the buy-in is there now, and that everybody's always going to want their own identity. But with the regionalism concept, we all have to look beyond our own identity. What has kept us from progressing past this point in the past?
Oh, that's
and
tough.
Can you put your finger on it? Did you come into this role and start seeing the players at the table and, realizing who's playing in the sandbox well and who isn't?
I think everybody has been willing to listen and to be at the table, and I think that skepticism, we've been at the table, we've seen efforts, we're tired.
Right.
Let's move forward. If somebody's going to move forward, we're on board, but we don't want to sit in another meeting, another strategy
Talk
discussion.
it over for another year.
Yes, and I think that people are ready for them to take action. There was a group, the Foundry group, that was doing some, I cannot think of what the title was, Ozark's Foundry, I think it was, and they just recently did a branding effort for the Ozarks, and that's actually what it was tagged. It was the Ozarks, and it was a grassroots effort, and I think that they had momentum. They were doing well, and lore had kind of came up, and so now I think some of their efforts is going to be brought over to this group of what they're already working on, and I think that even the and I don't know this, but the Springfield Regional Economic Partnership, I could see some of that possibly going over to lore, because lore, if you, on their strategies, they had a diagram, had 3 circles, and right in the middle was lore, and one of those circles, those legs, was economic development. And so if we're going to if the decision makers to move things forward need to know what's going on inside the region, and can talk what are the hiccups in Christian County? What are the hiccups in Stone and Taney County and Webster, and what is happening on how do we move forward? And so they need to hear from the different EDOs in the region now, to be able to make these decisions and to prioritize, what efforts are going to be done.
Got it.
And that's just my, I don't really know how that's all going to play out yet,
Yeah.
but I could see that happening. And previously, EDOs, that wasn't a thing 10 years ago. It was only the Springfield Chamber. And so, and I don't even know at what point really, with our organization, Marshfield has an EDO, Polk County has one, Stone and Taney County have one. So there's so many different economic development organizations now that are taking some of the roles that SREP was needing to do in the past.
Right.
So that's where it's kind of interesting how things are going to fall, and we'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I think so. Timing is everything. I was on the Ozarks Regional Economic Partnership when it was OREP, and then it transferred into SREP. And so there's always been this thought, but again, it was publicly driven. But there's a time when just kind of everything falls into place. I think most of these EDOs that you mentioned, they're being successful on their own. And as you mentioned, for Lore, economic development is just one leg of that, right? So it's really, bringing, you get it. You have to acknowledge and recognize that everyone still wants their identity. But we talked about this with Aaron and with Gary Gibson the week before about these site selectors. They don't know Springfield, let alone Ozark, Nixa. They don't know the names of those towns because they're lucky if they know St. Louis and Kansas City.
Right.
Now, I think it's in the beginning, it was like that. I think it's gotten better. But you have to have a way to market yourself, because if somebody comes into Christian County and they need a workforce of 500, can Christian County alone support that? Right. No. So you've got to understand that workforce is going to come from the region. The overflow of what that means in terms of economic impact, what goes way beyond Christian County or Greene County or whatever, it impacts the entire region. We have to do this, in my opinion, and I've been around this stuff for a long time. In my opinion, this is a win or lose situation. Yeah. We're at a point where we're already losing jobs to areas like Northwest Arkansas. We're losing to Nashville and places like that. So we've got to figure out what it is that makes us great, and we've got to promote ourselves as a regional entity working together in order to get those wins in the future. Yep. And that's where I think we are. It's do or die time. It really is. I feel like
getting goosebumps here, Angie.
I was going to say, do you need her on your team
she's
as a cheerleader?
We need to hear it.
And I think that's why we've taken the month of June to kind of focus on economic development and regionalism, because you learn how important it is to all of us, the economic impact of all of us, those of us who run businesses, those of us who are realtors, who are trying to, we want people, when somebody calls, and I can tell you this happens a lot, somebody calls us and they're not just looking at Springfield as a place to live. They're looking at 2 or 3 different cities, and they may not even be in the state, all in the same state. Yeah. As our population ages and they want to go somewhere that has a low cost of living, that has great amenities like parks and recreational areas, we stand out. But we're in competition for those people, and we need to be winning those people over by working together.
Yeah. Well, and you said it, workforce, it's a challenge, and the retirees, I mean, that population, we need them here, and the disposable income too that helps us. But I mean, there's a housing shortage, and I mean, you guys know that. So we need to have those hard discussions on how do we grow and who's going to where does everybody fit in that discussion?
Right.
I'm excited if they can do a regional housing study. We had a study done in Springfield. There was one pretty much that had just wrapped up in Taney County, and there's no other, and I'm like, why are we not looking at housing as a regional thing? And it just seems like, to me, those type of initiatives will be so helpful to have lore that says we need to spend our dollars here. This is going to be helpful to be able to address some of these, because we're going to be continuing to struggle and attracting people.
So if this is kind of a random question based on what you just said, because we're in real estate, I'm interested to see what you would answer this with. So in Christian County, if you were to put your finger on housing that's missing there, what would you say?
I actually would say something different for probably all of our communities, because...
Well, and I would agree with that. Yes, I know that you and I would say something different for all of our communities from a realtor standpoint.
Yeah. So I'm even going to take it a step forward. I think that there's some of our communities that are needing to grow, that our infrastructure's not there, and that we can't grow.
Correct.
That we need help, because we can create the housing solutions if we had the infrastructure.
Yes.
I would say Billings right now, just so everybody's aware, they are at the point of they can only build about 30 to 40 more homes until they're at capacity. And I'm not even just homes, like any businesses, any new structure, because of their sewer infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so that and
they've outgrown it.
Yeah. And the great thing is there's tax base for their community, for the city of Billings. They get quite a bit of support from housing developments. So, oh my gosh, Billings would take a housing development every single day of the week. And there's capacity at their schools as well.
Sure.
So they won't be putting kids in trailers at this point. And so we need Billings to grow. Clever is in the exact same boat, and they have people ready to build, but they don't have the infrastructure there. They're probably about 2 years out from and because they've saved, got a bill or got some I'm going to lose the base passed so they can build out some of their infrastructure, but it's still going to be 2 years. West of Nixa, same type of thing. They're going to be year and a half out on their west side to be able to do development, and it's not just housing, but it's housing and just in general development. So, Ozark, we're starting to see the strain on the infrastructure as well. And so that's where we could solve problems in Christian County if we had some of the financial support, probably from the state level, is going to have to step in. And that's what's, and that's what the region needs. And so that's where even the lore and Springfield Chamber, the regional efforts of having these discussions on where are we going to make the asks, because we're going to need this. And if they want to grow the whole region, like, we need to be at the table. We need to be letting them know this is what our needs are. So
It's a great answer.
It is, because I think people think, well, why doesn't somebody just go out and build houses? We got land everywhere.
Land's everywhere.
Well, you're absolutely right. We have to have sewer systems that aren't at capacity, and water systems that aren't at capacity, and there's a whole chain of events that have to happen before someone can come in and build 500 homes or 100 homes or 50,
So many things to think about.
And the cost to developers now, I mean, it's they're
outrageous.
And I mean, why would you build an affordable $200,000 home when you can do a couple of upgrades and sell it for $350,000 or $400,000, $500,000, and so that's what you're seeing, is they're seeing that there's a higher margin, and that's why, I know we get some of the frustrations of saying we don't have affordable houses that
Yeah.
are being
Yeah.
built. But,
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
reasons behind that.
yeah.
There really is.
And we've I've mentioned a little bit. We're getting quite a bit into the legislative advocacy because the Department of Economic Development, there were some bills about workforce housing, incentives for developers to be able to go in and build the $200,000 homes that people can afford. So I mean, we're really watching these and trying to know what opportunities are out there that we can tap into, because we need that price point for the whole region.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Kristen. It's been very interesting
Yes,
to
it has.
hear your input from Christian County, and we hope our listeners understand, it's economic development. When you say that, it's this big behemoth, right? A lot of people don't understand. I think what we've tried to do is kind of break that down and in bite size and help our listeners understand why it's important no matter what you do, right? No matter what job you're in. It affects everything that we do. Our school systems, our utility systems. It's just a big thing. And I'm very hopeful for Lore and for organizations like yours that are going to be at the table and what you bring to the table and furthering our region.
Yeah, thank you.
So thanks.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you guys.
Kristen.
Appreciate
Learned
it.
a lot today.
Yep. Well, thank you again, and thanks to Gershman for letting us record in their very beautiful studio. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Simply Authentic podcast. Be sure to hit follow so that you can see each episode as it pops up weekly.